This is a great transition because I did want to talk about, the differences and also similarities between the three of us. And I want to hear it from your perspective because, I can sit here and talk all day about Christina and Anna and what I've seen, but you clearly have seen them as dad for so long. But, what are those unique qualities, but differences between the three of us from a competitive standpoint that you saw with
Well,
us,
well, I
or you
mean,
still see
the
probably?
biggest thing was, yeah, the biggest thing was that, you didn't have anybody in front of you to watch. So you were the one that was the learner and, or was more, I'll say you were probably most skeptical of what we started doing. And Christina and Anna, they weren't. Now you were always, so the thing that you were all most similar with is that you worked hard. Nothing crazy, unique, or unusual about, you know, that. Hardworking thing is something that every coach likes, but you guys all did it from the very beginning. Now, it was probably easier for Christina and Anna to know that that was expected because you know you were the one that would work hard and but get pushed more. They were the ones that worked hard, and I didn't have to push. You all worked really, really hard, but the pushing was more necessary for you because you had no frame of experience to say, okay, that happened, or that
Hmm.
is what we need to do, because you'd have friends show up, and you'd be playing, or you'd come to a practice with them, and 80%, 90% of them were, screwing around. And so you would too. And then it would be time to get going. And you all collectively looked at it, originally like, are you serious? And then but then once you got it, you found there were a couple, you know, the situations that you guys are put into. And if you didn't have a couple competitive players with you, your trajectory could have been totally different.
I agree.
you know so again, you don't feel bad if you don't have it, or but be thankful that you did have it, because then you can you and another other players could push each other to a certain degree in different directions. And even if it's not even the healthiest of competition, Anna had that,
Mm.
where um yeah, I won't be specific about that, but she had one that was, you know acted like she was really, really better than everybody, and that is what drove Anna. But your drive, and again, it was the same level drive, was almost from a different angle.
Hmm.
You were doing it, because there were ones that were coming up from, I'll say, less skills that would all of a sudden be pushing you, but you were also climbing to somebody else, and then that would flip. They're, you shot better, they may have dribbled better, they may have anticipated better, but you may have been actually quicker and faster, so it was this, we keep on getting a little bit more, not necessarily someone's in front of the other one, but just keeping each other, I guess, I'll just say focused.
Hmm.
Now, Christina, I didn't talk anything about her. She was there a lot, even though you guys were 5 years apart. She was there a lot to see you develop, but then also experience your successes and failures, but a lot of successes. So when we started with Christina, or when Christina started playing, she already knew she was going to, do travel and only play rec ball out of necessity. And yes, she had friends. No, she wasn't so focused that she got distracted from, the other things to do as a child. None of that. But she knew that when you got to practice, first job was to get the balls out of the car and take them to the field and let's get going. You, I'd say, pick up the balls, Ash. We got to get them. I'm not gonna make 8 trips back and forth to the car. You're gonna come with me to
Wait,
it.
I have a story just because you said this. And I'm probably gonna butcher it a little bit, but I saw Jenna Simon recently and her dad. And this was before I joined Magic, which was the team. So Jenna Simon, just for listeners and so they can kind of understand the context. She played for Indiana Magic Gold, which was an eventual team I played on, and she was committed to play at Notre Dame before I joined the team. And apparently, before I joined Magic, he specifically remembers me carrying God knows what to the field, like everything I have it. And he goes, I remember you vividly walking into or out of the complex, and you just said, it's fun being a coach's daughter. And he goes, this is
Yeah.
before we even were, teammates and all that stuff. But apparently I had something to say about that.
So there's this great picture. This one was of Christina. We were in Denver's airport, and and or was it Chicago's airport going to Denver? But Christina is like sitting on, one of the chairs before we checked in, before we checked our luggage, and she's just sitting there kind of like this, and uh, and I just snapped a photo because surrounding her is every piece of equipment that I was carrying. I had it all with me. I didn't farm it out to other players. Here, you take a bucket, you take a bag, I had all of it. And she's like, it reminded me of that scene in E.T. where E.T. is hiding among all of those stuffed animals.
Oh yeah.
That's where she was, kind of, wedged inside of all this, and then they were the buckets and the bags and the everything, and our luggage was all like piled on the chairs in front of her, behind her, on side of her. But yeah,
We have some fun memories of traveling, that's for sure. But yeah, I agree though. Christina, she was a social one, but um she did lock in, you know? I don't think, and again, I see it from only my perspective. I always say like dad was harder on me than both of you, and I don't regret that because like you said, it was we were all learning and we were all trying to figure this out. But also, I probably wasn't as motivated as her. Um, but she did get to kind of
yeah.
see.
I don't motivated or just unknowing.
Sure.
Unknowing. She knew. Anna knew. You were there to learn, right? You were
Hmm.
the ones that was, creating the path, and they were the ones that just had to, not fall off of it.
Yeah. But let's talk about Anna a little bit because we did have her on talking about I did a live interview with her and I still want to get you into that studio that we did this in. Um, but we talked about, she's so much different, but she's so competitive. She's probably the most athletic of the three of us, I would say. I don't know. I don't know if you agree or not, but what is it about Anna that's different, but that makes her great? Because she obviously has things about her that are so different, but man, I'm so glad she is different.
Uh, you know, I think she took she was the one that hated to lose most.
Mm,
You know, you know, uh, but to sometimes to a fault, right? She wouldn't. You guys, when things didn't go well, you were more. Again, we didn't have these kinds of conversations, but my guess is that you guys took it more um, to your own individual responsibility. Anna looked at the whole thing, and she would be commenting about this or that or the other team or you know another player on her team and herself as well. So she understood or the she understood, I guess, that the more macro level of what was happening, on the court. For example, if we're talking about basketball or volleyball, uh, her 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 will to win was probably stronger than both of yours at young ages. That was it. Now, she was also the one that didn't like practicing.
Mm.
She would not like the drills. You know, she would shoot her free throws, she would run her drills. But when we ran sprints, you and Christina wanted to win every sprint. Not from a competitive standpoint, but just from, I'm going to go as fast as I can. Anna kind of like look around and just, kind of pace herself. Um, but she was very competitive. She understood the team concept, or not the concept, but she was always, a lot of these things maybe you wouldn't even put in the great category. She was work she did a lot of in-game coaching,
Oh yeah.
which I guess you could attribute also to leadership. Um, you know, now sometimes to a fault, she would get frustrated. She's like, "We just worked on this." I could see her telling her team,
Yeah.
or saying, "You're not supposed to be there. Get out of my way." That kind of stuff. She was more, I won't say win at all costs, because that, she was not a dirty player in any aspect of it, but also she had some tough moments when she started playing softball for the few years that she did, because first of all, she was pulled up into an older age group, and she was young for her class. So she was, uh, but she was good enough that she could play with them. But it was difficult for her at times because I was not coaching. Um, and it wasn't because I wasn't the coach, but because I was somewhere else, I couldn't coach. And so other coaches who would just say, okay, well, here's my tallest player, so she's going to play this position and she's going to bat, first, second, and third. And here's my smallest player, so we're going to put you at the bottom of the lineup.
Mm.
So she had to deal with some of that uh, old school rec mentality, and that probably helped form um, her desire to excel. You know, um, yeah. So
Yeah, I honestly don't remember. I remember it being a very, I don't want to say traumatic experience for Anna, but it is a massive reason why she stopped playing softball. Was that experience. And I think a lot of athletes do have some sort of experience around that, sadly. But again, I wasn't there to really see it because I'm 8 years older than her, and I was, I think, in the thick of even college at that point, maybe.
yeah,
But yeah, I'm glad you said that she did, find a little drive from it. But at the same time, I don't want that to be an experience for a young athlete. So
no. But what
what?
you can get out of that is that nothing is going to be perfect, no matter how well your parents plan it, no matter how well you think you're preparing for it, or you know getting the brand new bat, or what. You're still going to have setback, and it's being able to handle that setback and bounce up after you fall down, um, and try not to repeat the same thing is is what sets people apart. It's what sets them apart to say, hey, I'm going to keep on going with this, or you know what, I'm not gonna deal with it anymore. Now,
Mhm.
her in particular, she did have that, but she also had other sports to fall back on.
She
Um,
did, because she was so athletic. I know I've already said it, but I mean,
well, I
she could
mean,
have been an
again,
elite
everybody
catcher.
qualifies. Yeah, everybody qualifies. Athleticism, differently.
Sure.
All three of you were able to pick up any sport and do it reasonably well without even knowing how to do it at all, right? And that could be throwing, cornhole bags, or golfing when you first start. I mean, just there's that ability, but then there's also drive, and then there's also skill development. All of those things are what factor into who's ultimately going to succeed in a particular area.
Yeah. But along those lines too, we grew up in a very competitive household.
Did
I said,
we?
I wonder why. Um,
Well, I mean,
we did though. Like,
relative. It's all relative, right?
okay, we will whip out Battleship. It's fight to the death. It's I mean, I sent you the Caitlin Clark interview, and you're like, well, you know, didn't exactly like. I'm not even gonna say that, but I sent you. You know which video I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I
Where
forget what the
Caitlin
game
was
was. Yeah,
asked, um, what was it like? What was your household like? How competitive was it? And she goes, I ruined Christmas. She's like, I am the one who can't get over a loss on a card game, things like that. And I vividly remember some moments, especially around the holidays, where we're not very nice to each other playing games.
yeah.
We're better
E-
now, I will
But
say.
I still think that's relative. I don't think anybody. No, you guys never felt that. Whoever lost in playing Phase 10, had Christmas ruined, or that one of you did something in that game to ruin it for everybody else. That's a different level. That's a different level. I mean, I think there's just sibling rivalry, and that's there's nothing you can do about that, and it's probably natural and it may even be beneficial to certain degrees. But it's not like we weren't the household that said, okay, we're going to go play this game, and then we're going to play it again because you won last time, and I'm going to beat you, and I'm going to keep on making you play it until I win, and then as soon as I do win, I'm going to never want to play with you again because I will be the one who won the last time. I
No,
don't think we were ever to
no,
that.
we were not like
That's
that.
what I think about where you're ultra competitive. But if you were playing some made up game in the front yard with bases and a kickball, yeah, you didn't care that you didn't care if you were older or younger or faster or not even in the mood, you were going to get hit with the ball and to be put out.
I don't ever
And
remember taking it easy on Anna, even though I realize I'm 8 years older than her.
right. And to be honest, she probably would have saw through it and she probably would have said, "Well, we're not going to play anyway because you're
That's
not
how
even
Anna,
trying."
that's exactly what she would do. But
Right.
yeah, I think it's that competitive nature that I remember and cherish, so
Yeah.
much. And I see my neighbors behind us, they have three boys and they're always out there playing baseball. They have friends over, they're throwing, these nasty curveballs to each other, rolling their eyes, getting frustrated. And I'm like, this literally reminds me of what we did every day, before and after dinner.
Yep.
Yeah. But I think from a competitive standpoint, that is what I emphasize and what I hope that we get back to a little bit because I don't think, backyard sports are that exciting for young athletes anymore. And it's probably due to cell phones. I don't know. What would you attest it to?
Well, without a doubt. I mean, I am all for getting kids out there and just playing in playgrounds again. I don't know what the answer is. I'll probably continuously, with you, send you videos that you think that I'm uh, um, uh, not doing, and that's why I'm sending them. I was like, no, here's something that you don't, you guys didn't even get to do because it was starting to change, not so much with cell phones, but neighborhoods. There weren't the neighborhood get-togethers.
Hmm.
Um, you know, we didn't know, you know, this isn't on you. This is on, your mom and I, but there were many. I mean, we lived on a small street. There was probably only 15 houses, and I think we may have only knew three or four of the people that were in there, and that was on us. So if that led to this, not us specifically, but if that generation led to the staying in the house more and just playing online video games, and if that's your social interaction, then we need more sports outside, and we need more, kids running around and not coming in at night. And we need more parents that are going to just let them do it and and take the big risk that they're not going to get abducted and put chips on them to know every step that they are. There
Yeah,
has to be
it's
there
hard.
has to be some pendulum swing back to center to not um to teach your kids how to be safe, but also let them go and make mistakes. And maybe that means that there's going to be more visits to the emergency room because somebody fell off their bike trying to do something stupid. I'm like, well, you know,
They're taking
yeah, but guess
risks.
what? He's learned that he's not going to go try to, create a ramp on a half-inch piece of plywood and think it's going to hold his weight when he tries to, Evil Knievel jump over some whatever on his bicycle.
And lucky enough, I have, another boy coming, so I'm sure we'll have some hospital visits. So
Yeah.
great.
Well, again, you just have to, yeah, uh, right. No, I get it. I
We'll
get it.
figure it
And
out.
you will, you will. I mean, it's no different than how we started this conversation tonight about, what did you start with? So, I started coaching and then I had to go ahead and, you know, figure it out. See what things do I recall from, when I was young to maybe intervene, maybe not intervene, make the decision to I'm gonna not intervene. I am gonna intervene, but I'm not gonna let him know I'm intervening, just to kind of, just kind of keep an eye on how things are going. And it, I don't think the world's any scarier now than it was back in the 50s or 60s, and when I came around was in the 70s and the 80s, but we've all decided we have to um, try to prevent everything from happening. And I think what we're actually doing is preventing growth from happening.
I agree. It's the same scary, maybe just different types of scary. Again, cell phones weren't a thing when I was growing up, but there were other things that, you know, could lead to distractions. But yeah, I've enjoyed this so much. I don't know if you have, but this has been fun.
Well, I don't, so, off camera, I'm always either thinking or I'm talking like, look, I'm not coaching anymore. So if you ask me X, Y, or Z, I don't really, I may not have that answer, or I may think about it and I'm like, oh, maybe I should have said something differently because something might have popped into my head afterwards.
Well, that's why
Because
we want to get you on more.
to force
Maybe
to force me to relive
relive
all
the good, the
that.
bad, the ugly. Yes, because
Well,
that makes
I
all of us
cherish
better,
it
Dad.
all. What's that?
I said, yes, I need you to relive that because it makes all of us better as coaches. But I do love what you said though about over time, it was the experience piece that allowed you to, I don't even want to say move up the rankings in the coaching world because you didn't really strive to do that. You just wanted to keep coaching us, but you were a great coach, and I know you don't care that I say that, but it was so much of your experience that you just kept learning and relearning, and that's where I feel like there's so much value in what you have to say. So yeah, if you do wake up at 2 a.m. with some more things that you wish you would have said, that just prompts us for another episode. So I'm here for
Yeah.
it.